The night that changed everything. It was a cold evening in Los Angeles, the kind that hides emotions behind city lights. Sandra Bullock had just finished a charity event, smiling for cameras while her heart quietly begged for peace. She had no idea that fate had already chosen someone to protect her that night. Keanu Reeves was driving back from a small motorcycle ride, his helmet reflecting the golden glow of the streetlights. He stopped at a red signal, lost in his own silence, when he saw a black car speeding toward a white SUV near the intersection. Within seconds, metal screamed and glass shattered. The white SUV flipped once, then landed on its side. He rushed forward without thinking twice. As he reached the wreck, he saw her, Sandra Bullock, unconscious but breathing, trapped by a twisted seatbelt. Smoke rose from the hood, flames beginning to dance. Keanu pulled off his jacket, wrapped it around his arm, and broke the glass. The fire hissed against the cold air. He freed her and carried her out seconds before the vehicle exploded behind them. She opened her eyes weakly and saw only a shadowed face under the streetlight. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was calm. "You are safe now," he whispered. Then he walked away into the fog before the sirens arrived. For days, Sandra tried to find him. The police had no name. The CCTV was blurred. All she remembered was the gentle voice and the faint scent of motor oil. She began to think maybe he was never meant to be found. Years passed. Her career grew brighter, her heart stronger, but sometimes she looked at the city skyline and whispered a thank you to the unknown man who changed her life. What she didn't know was that Keanu had left the city the next morning, hiding a truth even deeper than his act of bravery. One night, almost 7 years later, a letter arrived at Sandra's doorstep. No name, no address, only 2 words written in careful handwriting. "Forgiveness begins," she froze. The handwriting felt hauntingly familiar. Her hands shook as she held the letter close to her heart. The world around her seemed to fade again into that same foggy night. She whispered to herself, "Who are you really?" And miles away, in a quiet village near Vancouver, Keanu Reeves looked at an old photo tucked inside a wooden box. The picture showed him and a woman who looked exactly like Sandra, but wasn't. His eyes filled with memories he thought he had buried forever. The woman in the photograph. Morning sunlight touched the quiet village in Vancouver, painting the small wooden cabin in gold. Keanu Reeves sat by the window holding a mug of black coffee that had long gone cold. On the table lay the same photograph that haunted him every night. It was old, slightly torn, but the face in it was clear. She had the same eyes as Sandra Bullock, the same smile, but she wasn't her. Her name was Elena. Years ago, she had worked at a small bookstore in Los Angeles. Keanu had met her long before fame and lights had filled his life. Elena believed in kindness more than success, and she often told him, "What we give to others always returns, even if we never see it." But one rainy evening, an accident took her life. Keanu had been driving that night. The guilt never left him. He blamed himself even though the police called it fate. Since then, he had promised one thing. Whenever he saw someone in danger, he would act. No cameras, no names, no credit. Just a quiet act of redemption for Elena. The night he saved Sandra Bullock, something inside him felt different. The way she looked, the way she whispered before losing consciousness. It brought back the memory of Elena so vividly that he couldn't stay. He left before the police arrived because facing her would mean facing his past again. Meanwhile, Sandra sat in her Los Angeles home, staring at the mysterious letter. The words, "Forgiveness begins," repeated in her mind like a soft echo. She called her assistant, asking to check the postal source, but the envelope had no trail, no fingerprints, no stamp. It was hand-delivered. That evening, she visited a quiet park near downtown where she often found peace. As she sat under an old oak tree, a man approached with a small envelope in his hand. His clothes were simple and his eyes calm. "This was left at my cafe for you," he said politely. She opened it slowly. Inside was another message, short and strange. 7 years is enough to hide. The truth is waiting where the fire began." Her heart skipped. She looked around, hoping to see someone familiar, but the man had already disappeared into the evening crowd. That night, Sandra couldn't sleep. She replayed that night from 7 years ago over and over. The fire, the smell of smoke, the voice that told her she was safe. She whispered, "Maybe he's alive. Maybe he's closer than I think." Keanu, miles away, walked down a forest path leading to an old church. An elderly priest greeted him warmly. "Still carrying the same burden, my son?" the priest asked kindly. Keanu nodded quietly. "Until I find peace," he replied. The priest smiled gently. "Sometimes peace finds you when you least expect it." As Keanu lit a candle for Elena, his phone buzzed for the first time in days. A message appeared from an unknown number. "Do you still believe in second chances?" His hands froze. No one knew this number. No one was supposed to. And yet he felt the same chill he had felt that night by the burning car. The message ended with one final line. "Come back to Los Angeles. She needs to know." Returned to Los Angeles, the plane touched down just before sunset. The city looked different now, but the memories were the same. KeanuReeves stepped out quietly, wearing a cap and a simple jacket. No bodyguards, no cameras, just a man walking back into the shadows of his own past. He hadn't planned to return. For 7 long years, he had lived in silence, helping strangers, and avoiding the city that held both his biggest mistake and his deepest memory. But that message, "Come back to Los Angeles, she needs to know," kept echoing in his mind. He didn't know who sent it, but something inside told him that running away had finally reached its end. In another corner of the city, Sandra Bullock stood near the site of the old crash. The intersection was rebuilt, clean and quiet now. But when she closed her eyes, she could still hear the screech of tires and feel the heat of the flames. She placed a small white flower at the spot, whispering, "To the man who saved my life." A stranger watched her from across the street, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He held a phone in his hand and murmured softly, "He came back, just like you said he would." Hours later, Keanu checked into a small motel near the edge of the city. He left his phone on the table, still glowing with that single message. The name of the sender was blank. He opened his old wooden box again, the same one he kept since Elena's death. Inside were 2 photos, one of Elena smiling under a bookstore sign, and one of Sandra from a movie poster. Both faces looked like reflections of each other, 2 souls connected by something he couldn't explain. He whispered, "Why her? Why again?" Suddenly, a soft knock came at the door. He froze. Few people even knew he was back. He opened the door slowly. A young woman stood there, holding a small envelope. Her voice was calm, almost trembling. "Someone asked me to give you this, Mr. Reeves. She said you'd understand." He took the envelope. Before he could ask, she had already turned and walked away into the night. He opened it. Inside was a photograph of the crash site, recently taken. On the back, a message was written in the same handwriting as before. "The truth lies in the ashes. She remembers you." His heart began to race. Sandra was the only one who could remember him that way. But how did she find him? Who was delivering these letters? And what did truth mean after all these years? The next morning, Sandra met her old friend and journalist, Michael, at a small cafe. She told him about the letters, the strange messages, and her feeling that the man who saved her was still alive. Michael listened carefully, then asked, "What if he doesn't want to be found?" She looked down, her eyes soft but determined. "Then I'll wait. But if he's carrying pain because of me, I need to know why." The same day, Keanu went back to the intersection for the first time since that night. He stood there looking at the road, the traffic lights, the place where his life had changed twice, his mind filled with flashes of fire, broken glass, and the moment he carried her out. Then, across the street, he saw her. Sandra stood by the memorial, holding the same white flower again. Their eyes met for the first time in 7 years. Time seemed to stop. The noise of the city faded into silence. She took a slow step forward, her eyes widening in disbelief, but before she could reach him, a black car stopped between them. The door opened and a man stepped out. Keanu recognized that face. It belonged to someone from Elena's past. Someone he thought was gone forever. The man smiled coldly and said, "You still don't know why she died, do you?" Keanu's breath caught. Sandra looked confused, stepping closer. The man dropped a small envelope at Keanu's feet and whispered, "You were never supposed to save her." Then he walked away, leaving Keanu frozen in shock. As Sandra ran toward him, Keanu bent down and picked up the envelope. Inside, a single photograph. Elena standing beside the same car that had crashed with Sandra 7 years ago. His hands shook as the truth began to twist his world apart. The hidden truth. The sound of traffic faded as Keanu Reeves stared at the photograph in disbelief. His mind couldn't accept what his eyes were seeing. Elena, the woman he lost years before, was standing beside the same car that Sandra Bullock had crashed in 7 years ago. It made no sense. She was supposed to be gone long before that accident. Sandra stood beside him, breathing heavily, confused and afraid. "Keanu, what is that? Who was that man?" she asked softly. Keanu looked at her, his voice shaking. "This car? It's the same one from your crash. But Elena, she died before that night." Sandra frowned, stepping closer to see the photo. "Who's Elena?" He hesitated. Saying her name out loud again hurt more than he expected. "She was the woman I loved," he said quietly. "She died in an accident years ago. I thought it was my fault. I thought saving you that night was my way of forgiving myself." Sandra's heart ached at the pain in his voice. She could see the truth in his trembling hands. "But how is she in this picture?" she asked. He didn't answer. He couldn't. They drove to an old police station where records from that crash were still stored. Keanu requested the files under a fake name, pretending to be a journalist. Hours later, they found the file, thin, dusty, but enough to open old wounds. The report mentioned an unidentified passenger in the car that hit Sandra's SUV. The passenger never made it to the hospital. The name was missing, replaced with 2 initials. Keanu's heart stopped. "Elena Reeves," he whispered the name like a prayer. Sandra looked at him in silence. "You mean," she said carefully, "she was in the car that hit me?" He nodded slowly, tears gathering in his eyes. "I think she was trying to find me that night. Maybe to say goodbye, maybe to forgive me, and I never knew." The weight of it crushed him. He sat down on the bench outside the station, his hands covering his face. For 7 years, he had carried guilt for something that was never truly his fault. And yet, the universe had brought him face to face with the woman who unknowingly connected them both. Sandra Bullock. Sandra sat beside him quietly. No words, no questions. Just presence. After a long silence, she spoke gently. "Maybe you didn't just save me that night, Keanu. Maybe she sent you to." He looked up, his eyes glistening. "You really believe that?" She smiled faintly. "I believe people we love never leave us. They guide us in ways we don't understand." That night, they visited the old crash site together. Keanu knelt by the roadside, lighting a small candle for Elena. He whispered softly, "I thought I lost you forever, but you were still saving me?" Sandra placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with quiet tears. For the first time in years, Keanu felt the weight lift off his chest. Not completely, but enough to breathe again. Then, as the candle flickered, something unexpected happened. A passing car slowed down and the driver looked out the window. It was the same man who had given Keanu the photograph earlier. He smiled coldly once more and said, "You think that's the whole truth?" "Ask who sent the letters." Keanu froze. The headlights faded as the car drove off into the night. He turned to Sandra. "Someone's still playing with us?" She nodded, fear and determination in her eyes. "Then we find out who." Keanu stood, the candlelight dancing in his reflection. For the first time, he wasn't running from his past. He was walking toward it. The next morning, he received a message on his phone. No name, no number. Just 3 words. "Come to her grave." The graveyard's secret. The sky was heavy with clouds when Keanu Reeves reached the cemetery. Raindrops touched the old stone path, and the wind whispered through tall trees. He carried a single white rose, the same flower Elena once loved. His footsteps slowed as he saw her name carved into the gray marble. Elena Reeves, a light that never faded. He knelt beside the grave, his heart pounding like it did that night by the fire. Every memory came back, the bookstore laughter, her smile, her final words. But now there were questions he could no longer ignore. He whispered, "Why were you in that car, Elena? What were you trying to tell me?" As he placed the flower, a faint sound caught his attention. Footsteps. He turned and saw Sandra Bullock standing under an umbrella. She had followed him quietly, wanting to be there for whatever he was about to face. She said softly, "You didn't have to come alone." He smiled faintly. "Some ghosts only speak when it rains." She walked closer and looked at the grave. For a moment, both stood in silence, the rain falling like tears from the sky. Then, Sandra noticed something strange. Beside Elena's grave was a smaller, unmarked stone, half covered in moss. Carved faintly into it were two letters, ER. Her eyes widened. This was the same code from the police file. Keanu brushed off the moss and found something else, a small locket buried in the dirt. He opened it carefully. Inside were two photos, one of Elena, one of him. But behind the photos was a folded note, yellowed with time. He unfolded it with trembling fingers. The handwriting was Elena's. "If you find this, it means I couldn't tell you in time. They wanted to use me to reach you. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I was trying to stop them. Please, Keanu, forgive me. You must protect the woman in the white car. She doesn't know what danger she's in." Keanu's face turned pale. The letter slipped from his hands. Sandra whispered, "The woman in the white car." That was me. Everything began to connect. The crash wasn't random. It wasn't fate. Elena had been trying to stop someone from harming Sandra that night. She had sacrificed herself in the process. Keanu looked up at the sky, his voice breaking. "All these years I thought I was saving you, but it was her who saved both of us." Sandra knelt beside him, tears mixing with the rain. "She must have known you would be there. Maybe she sent you that night." He nodded, his voice shaking. "She found her forgiveness before I did." Then a shadow moved behind the trees. The same man who had given Keanu the photo stepped forward, clapping slowly. His tone was cold. "Beautiful story, isn't it? But you're still missing one truth." Keanu stood tall, anger and calm blending in his eyes. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "Someone Elena trusted. Someone who betrayed her." He threw a file onto the wet ground. Inside were photos, bank receipts, and an old letterhead with the logo of a powerful studio. "Your dear Elena discovered something about the charity fund that night. A secret tied to both of you. She tried to warn her friend, Sandra Bullock." Sandra stepped back, stunned. "My charity?" The man nodded. "Money was being stolen under your name. She tried to stop it. They used her to crash the car. And when Keanu arrived, you both survived what was meant to silence you." Keanu's fists clenched. The rain poured harder. "So you used her and she paid with her life?" The man smirked. "We all pay for secrets, Mr. Reeves. Some just pay sooner." Before Keanu could react, the man turned and disappeared into the fog, leaving only the soaked papers behind. Keanu fell to his knees, his breath heavy, his heart torn between rage and grief. Sandra touched his shoulder gently. "We can't let her sacrifice go unnoticed. She died protecting the truth. Now we finish what she started." He looked at her, his eyes filled with fire. "Then we do it together." The rain stopped suddenly, and sunlight broke through the clouds, falling softly on Elena's grave. It was as if the universe had given them a sign, a silent blessing. But neither of them knew that someone else had been watching from a distance, recording everything through a small camera hidden under a black umbrella. The story wasn't over. The real danger had just begun. The final truth: the next morning, the sun rose over Los Angeles, calm and golden, hiding the storm that was about to come. Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock sat together in her living room. The files from the cemetery spread across the table. Coffee grew cold beside them, untouched. Their eyes were tired, but their hearts were steady. The documents told everything. Elena had worked for the same charity foundation Sandra co-founded years ago. She discovered that senior officials were stealing millions in donations meant for children's hospitals. She tried to expose them, but when she reached out to warn Sandra, they intercepted her. They planned the crash to silence her. But destiny had other plans. Keanu clenched his fists. They took her life to protect their greed. Sandra's voice trembled but held strength. "Then we'll make sure everyone knows the truth." Together, they visited an old contact of Sandra's, Michael, the journalist who had helped her before. He read through the files in silence, his expression changing from disbelief to shock. "This could destroy them," he said. Keanu nodded. "Good. Let it. For the next few days, they worked in secret. Michael prepared the report, collecting new evidence and tracing every transaction. Keanu found the mysterious man who had threatened them. His name was Marcus Hale, a former executive from the same charity. But when they tried to locate him again, he was gone. Meanwhile, strange things began to happen. Sandra's car brakes failed one night. Keanu's cabin in Vancouver was broken into. Someone was watching them, making sure they stayed silent. But they didn't stop. They couldn't. 3 weeks later, Sandra stood on stage at a charity gala, the same event that once marked the beginning of her tragedy. The cameras flashed, the audience applauded, unaware of what was about to happen. Keanu watched from the back, calm and steady, his eyes never leaving her. She began her speech softly. 7 years ago, I survived an accident that changed my life. I was saved by a man I never knew and by a woman I never met. The crowd grew silent. She held up a photograph of Elena, smiling under the bookstore sign. Her name was KeanuReeves. She worked for this foundation. She discovered that funds meant for children's care were being stolen. She tried to warn us. She paid with her life. Gasps filled the hall. Cameras turned. Reporters stood up. Sandra's voice remained calm. We honor her today by revealing what she died protecting. The truth. At that moment, Michael streamed the full investigation live. Every name, every record, every stolen dollar. Within minutes, the internet exploded with the story. The corrupt officials tried to flee, but the authorities were already waiting. Keanu stepped forward, joining Sandra on stage. Applause filled the hall, mixed with tears. He whispered, "She's free now." Sandra looked at him and said, "So are you." Later that night, they returned to the cemetery one last time. The city lights shimmered in the distance. Keanu placed a candle beside Elena's grave, and Sandra placed the white rose again. He whispered, "You saved her, and through her, you saved me." "I finally understand," Sandra smiled gently. "She'd be proud of you." He looked at her, calm and peaceful for the first time in years. Maybe the universe doesn't take people away. It just changes how they guide us. As the candlelight flickered, a soft breeze passed through the trees. Keanu felt something warm on his cheek. Not rain, not tears, but a whisper of peace. He closed his eyes, smiled, and said softly, "Goodbye, Elena." Sandra stood beside him, holding his hand quietly. The city stretched behind them, endless and alive. Two souls once broken by fate, now bound by gratitude and purpose. The world would remember KeanuReeves not as a victim, but as a light that never faded.